Hey everyone, my name is Naguura and today I have another M Plus Bootcamp for you. This time it was Gingi that joined me and we talked a bunch about the MDI, TGP, competitive dungeon, esports, and all that kind of stuff while I was doing the dungeon. So he did give me tips and tricks that are sprinkled throughout the video, but overall the discussion was a little bit focused on the competitive aspect of dungeons and his experience in the competitive scene, and it was incredibly insightful. So I hope you guys enjoy the information, and thank you so much, Gingi, for joining me. Enjoy. While we wait for the priest here, can you quickly give me your opinion on the class rule that or the spec rule that they added to the TGP now that you played your weekend?
Yeah, so actually a lot of people talked about this. The class rule itself, I think it's interesting. I think it's, at the end of the day, the most important thing is having the viewers enjoy the content, right? Like that's more important than whatever the players like. At the end of the day, because like the viewership is the number one thing. So most people like to see different comps and different classes being played. And I don't know if it's the best way it was implemented. I know some of the teams were, because like you have the good teams that are actively trying to get to globals and win the cups. They're going to be playing off meta comps. And then you have like mid-tier teams that are still good at the game playing meta comps. And the top teams need to play that much better because they are, starting from behind and then still end up winning the tournament. So it puts them a little bit behind the other teams they're playing against that are just going for, well, we just need to make it to day 3. We're going to play meta comps just to get to play day 3. And then they are going to completely shamble on day 3 with like an off meta comp, right? That's what some teams did, for example. And I know 07 almost went out because of that. My idea was that Blizzard decides what comps you play in the dungeons and you notify it ahead of time. Or maybe not to that degree, but they have, instead of making a full comp, because I think you can make a good comp and then at the same time have every spec in the game kind of being represented in a tournament. Because you don't want to like just throw random shit together. You want to throw comps that has different class buffs that kind of like synergize as well and complements the classes that are in the comp, right? So like you want to have Mistweaver in a physical damage dealer comp, for example, and stuff like that. You also want to make sure that you have a Bloodlust in the dungeon, and you want to have a few combat reses too. So like if you really balance the comps around it pretty well, I do think that you can play a lot of good comps. And then the teams will get notified ahead of time so they can practice those dungeons with that comp. And I feel like that idea is a bit better. It would have every team play the same comps in each different dungeons, but it would be on, like, say, everyone would be on the same classes, so it would be fair for a tournament format.
Don't you think it would be a bit like a tall task to ask every team to be able to play all classes, though?
This would be a format that would definitely play like into the strength of the very experienced teams that have been playing for many seasons. They would like this format better. So it would be harder barrier of entry for new teams that just plays meta comp and that's all they play and they push high with that. And teams that have been playing MDIs and TGPs for many seasons that have like experience on like every single class in the game across their team would of course have a big advantage there. So you could do it on a smaller scale to start off with, where instead of being a full comp, they are just making it so that you have to have a certain tank or a certain healer or a certain DPS represented in like different dungeons. That could be one way. So they start off a little bit slower by adding, let's say, 1 or 2 required classes in a dungeon instead of making the full comp. But
okay, that's an interesting idea. Another downside, I guess, that would maybe happen is that like one of the cool things that I noticed when I was casting last time was that when we saw different comps in the same dungeon, there was obviously like route differences, which I thought was interesting, which would not happen with your idea, right? I guess. I mean, that's like a small downside. There's going to be downsides to all things that you do, right? But yeah, one of the things I thought was cool is like, oh, when they had the Warlock, they did this. And when they had the Guardian Druid, they did that. And now they're doing it differently, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with it. Let's say you're playing the dungeon with different comps, but it would also change week by week, right? Because like I assume that they are gonna make different compositions from different cups and for globals.
Yeah.
So like, so it would switch over the course of like the whole MDI. I'm not sure exactly what Blizzard wants, but I guess they want to be able to showcase all of the specs and classes as much as they can. Because that's not a bad thing, right? For showcasing their game is to make sure that like all specs does get some kind of screen time over like the whole tournament.
Yeah, one cool thing that would happen, as you said, like if they're switching the comp for each dungeon between weekends, then I guess there's a possibility that teams might be more likely to stream their practice because they know that the other teams are like, you're not going to play that same comp again for that dungeon, right? And obviously the route that you're playing is going to be very dependent on the comp that you do. So another team cannot like fully copy your strat or like figure things out. Teams probably still wouldn't be streaming their practice, but maybe it would be more likely. And teams also would have to figure out their own routes a lot more and their own strats instead of just copying stuff, which would also make it more interesting to watch. Because if everyone just ends up doing the same thing, then yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the interesting part would be that the routes and strats would change from week to week because you would have to come up with a way of doing the dungeon with a comp you're not used to. Instead of like over the course of like each weekend, watch aggro by the way, you should share them well. Everyone starts start implementing technology from the other teams, and what ends up usually happening is that people have somewhat close to each other's strats. There's like only like a few differences here and there, of course. But people end up having very similar routing because everyone will, have tech from each team, and that they would have is implemented by the time globals come. So there will not be like massive differences in routing, but the different comps would definitely change that.
Is there any suggestion you have for MDI and TGP that would lower the barrier of entry for like newer teams? Because I feel like that is like one of the biggest issues we have for the tournament overall, that a lot of teams don't want to compete because they know they can't possibly win until they actually participate a few times in a row, which obviously is demotivating. So I wonder if there's like a format idea that you have that would maybe fix that, or?
I think maybe they can change the resilience system. I think the resilience system is great. I just think that they should make it a bit more similar to how it is on Tournament Realm, where if you've completed all 16s, right, as an example, and you have Resilience 16.
Yeah.
Instead of it being, 16s don't deplete anymore, why not a key level above that you've just completed? And then it becomes more of like a steady progress where, okay, now I've done all 16s, now the next goal is all 17. And then now you have, the ability to do trial and error on 17 until you move up again. So it becomes more of like progressing and pushing each key level rather than, spending too much time building keys and then get, more players comfortable on, let's say, the key level above, and then like progress like that and get better and better. I feel like that would be a better way of doing it, because that's kind of how we're practicing, right? We don't ever deplete our keys. If we want to try out a certain key at the highest level, obviously we're going to get depleted a few times and like get comfortable in the key level, know what kills are, know what's possible, and then eventually you get comfortable in that and you find a way to deal with that key level, and then maybe you move on to the next one. So I feel like that mentality would make more players on live a lot better at the game, and I feel like it would be a more natural learning curve for people to get better and plus.
Okay.
So I feel like that's one change I would do to the resilience system.
I do like 100% agree with what you're saying, but like for me personally, like I'm just like talking from a person that is not interested in like doing TGP or generally just like doing that. Because to me, what I dislike about TGP practice, like as a player, is I personally am not super interested in doing a key over and over and over and over and over until we get it all done. For me, I really like the laid back kind of approach to M+, where you do a key, if it doesn't work out, you move on, you do something else. Because I feel like that is like more laid back, right? It's less try hard, I guess. So I do see why people like your approach too. Like, I guess there's just different points of views. And the thing, if you apply this resilient change as you're suggesting, then I think it would turn M+ like high keys, even pugging, into a lot more of this more structured kind of TGP approach, rather than the laid back approach, which for me as a player would not be super enjoyable. Like, I don't want to join a pug and then we do a key 15 times because we try this really hard pull that we can't do, so we just reset a million times, you know what I mean? But that's just me. Like, I understand that other people would like it differently.
Do you think that's what people would do? They would go in like and do like a crazy ass pull and then Hail Mary it, and they would work out 1 in 10 times? That's not
and
really
hierarchies,
the way.
I think so.
Okay.
You don't think so?
I think some teams would do that, some players would do that, but I don't think it's the right approach to do that, though. I think you learn the most from a dungeon not by banging your head against the wall against like really difficult pulls in the beginning of the dungeon, but instead having.
Well, that's not really what I mean, though. Like, it's not just about like a big pull at the start. I generally mean that, like, when things are really like planned in detail, which is only something you can really do if you have those like higher resilient keys, or if you're like on Tournament Realm or whatever, right? Like, it's impossible for you to do a key with the old key system, for example, on live keys, and plan every single detail, because, I mean, you know, unless you're like a super experienced group that has been playing, that plays a lot together, right? So I guess what I'm saying is, I guess I don't like it when everything is like super, super like planned in detail when it comes to Mythic Plus, because that to me feels more like Mythic rating than it feels like M+. And I understand that players are evolving, and we've played M+ for so long that in general this is like a thing that is happening nowadays anyway. But I feel like it would happen even more if we had Resilient on hierarchy levels too. But in the end, you never know if it would happen or not in packs as well.
I mean, if you're joining a group and they keep like wiping and doing the same key 15 times, I mean, you can just leave the group if you don't want that. You can also just say, hey guys, we've been doing this dungeon, like we've been doing it so much, when I like try this dungeon instead, and just swap key, you know, like you're not forced to do that, I think.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're not forced to do it, but if everyone is doing it, you are kind of forced to do it, because otherwise you can't get anything done, right?
But that would also be so boring. I don't see a world where people would bang their head against the wall against a dungeon that they don't even see is like remotely close to being, you know, possible. Going in, playing a somewhat easier route, and then like playing through the dungeon, and you know, that's more enjoyable for most players than it is to make like super difficult dungeon that doesn't have very high success rate. And I also think that's how you learn the most, right? Like, you don't want to just be good at the beginning of a key. You want to kind of just play through the whole thing. You want to like see every boss. You want to understand what does damage, what doesn't do damage. And like, I feel like that's the best approach. And I just think that the overall skill level of each player, once you start getting to those higher key levels, they will kind of be on the same page as you, because you're going to have like a natural progression once you start doing 17 keys, that you have done every key on 16. So you're going to be playing with people, unless they've bought a boost, of course, that are on the same stage as you in terms of experience and skill, because you've all been progressing all 16s, and now you are at that 17 key level. So you're kind of like all on the same page. And I feel like if it is a progressive system like that, people also start having somewhat of the same, you know, routing. There are probably going to be a lot of like public routes out there that are going to be pretty popular. So people will kind of have a basic understanding of the keys by the time you get to that level that you have been doing at the previous key levels. Now you just need to get comfortable with, you know, everything having more HP and doing more damage. So I think it will be a very natural way of doing it. And I don't see you running into the problems. Of course, there's probably going to be a few groups that will do like you said, but I don't think it'll be a normal thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I do understand. Like, I'm not. I think this is like a bigger problem. This is like a more like a point of view problem, where you're the things that you like about M+ are like just different to me and maybe some other players. People have different opinions, right? But one thing I guess that in my head could also potentially happen, that is something that is maybe not super noticeable, is that people just generally are going to be more knowledgeable about everything in a dungeon. Right? Because like, just because I don't want to reset a key a million times and look at every single detail about every single mob, other people will do that. And that's something that at the moment is not possible, and therefore people or at least in the past it wasn't possible. So therefore, a lot of people did not know every single detail about every single ability and how it interacts with everything, right? And then everyone was kind of like on the same page in a sense. And if that changes and you approach dungeons more like a TGP kind of style practice rather than live server thing, then it's possible that the barrier, not the barrier entry, but like the gap between the best players, the most knowledgeable players, and more casual high-end players is going to widen, because these really like try-hard players that play all day, they'll have all of this knowledge and all of this stuff that they have figured out by doing resilient keys, right? And other people did not. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind if they added, honestly. Like it's not something I'm like super bothered by. I'm just saying that that's could potentially be something that happens that maybe I would not be the biggest fan of. But I'm not like necessarily against resilient keys going higher up. Like, and especially if it helps TGP, I personally think that we do need help with that. As I said earlier, because the barrier of entry is so high right now, and I would love if there was more teams that can actually compete with teams like you guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think if you like just the more casual vibes and you don't mind all the builder keys, but I can say that for a casual player, time is a big thing, and you were talking about the gap being big because the top teams will be able to play a lot and they would have a lot of time. But you also got to remember that in TGP, and when we are doing these keys, we hit a ceiling. We have a end goal and a key level that we think is the absolute maximum that is possible. And then once you do that key, the only thing you can actively do is maybe try and complete that key a bit faster than what you did. You're gonna hit like a cap of like what you realistically can do with the gear that you have. So at some point that gap stops because you cannot complete the keys anymore. You're like kind of done. You hit the maximum key level that is possible in that dungeon because you just cannot put up damage enough to do the key level above, or you're not able to survive certain abilities, right? Yeah. And I feel like for people that don't have as much time, the resilience system working a key level above instead of, key level that you're at would mean that people would be able to spend their time actively getting score and getting better at the game instead of spending the limited time they have on building keys and having limited time on the keys that they actually need and progressing. So it becomes more of this like progressive system that, and whatever hour of the game time that they're spending actively learning, getting better and improving their score, rather than having limited time of playing and then spending much time building keys that they've already done. And whenever they are finally getting to a key level that they need, they deplete the key, and then the players that also need the key, they start leaving, and you end up spending time in the dungeon finder again, and you end up not playing as much. That's what I feel like is happening with the current system.
Well, another problem with the current... Well, I think the number one biggest problem when it comes to time waste is not getting invited, right? Which I think has nothing to do with Resilient, honestly. Like, that's a completely different story. But one thing that I see happens a lot in pub groups is even when you have a Resilient key, people will either not continue after they deplete it because usually they think, oh, some player is not good enough, or that was this person's fault. I don't want to continue with this group. Like, this group sucks. Like, they will blame somebody and then think that they just don't want to continue, right? That definitely happens a lot. And then another thing, I guess, that happens is that you do the Resilient key and then people do continue like once or try again once and then they leave. But you are right. Like, sometimes I wish a key was Resilient when I feel like the group was kind of good and we ended up, wiping for something that was not necessarily anyone's like fault, or I mean, I guess it was someone's fault, but it wasn't like a super big mistake and people are not like necessarily blaming them. Then I wish we could continue. Like, that definitely happens to me quite a few times, where I'm like really happy that I got invited, and then we wipe on the first pull because of some stupid thing, and then it's not Resilient and we have to just go back into the group finder.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. I feel like everyone is like progressing 17 keys, right? Because you all have Resilient there now because you did all 16s. You're all like kind of at the same stage and you're all progressing these key levels together. And you're like, damn, this group is really good. but we wiped to something very unfortunate on the last boss or whatever. But this group is like really good. If the resilience system was different, you could actually just go again, and you're like, oh, then you timed it the second try, and then you're like, damn, I want to continue with this group, and then you guys move on to the next key, and before you know it, you guys add each other in friend list, and you got yourself like some players that you like playing with. And I feel like that's a better approach than, you know, playing one key with someone and then depleted it and you leave. And you don't even know that you might have, like, let's say, there might have been players that you would be able to play with in the future because, like, they were good players and you wanted to play with them again, right? And I feel like you might meet some good teammates that way.
Yeah, there's definitely upsides to the suggestion you have. Yeah, and plus it's just this weird thing at the moment where it's like, we kind of want this to change, but then maybe something bad happens. I don't know, it's like... so this dungeon that I'm doing right now, did I play the first boss correctly, or did you notice anything that I was like doing really wrong?
Well, you were very far away from the boss. It was good that you melted the charges. You did your bear wild chats and stuff like that. You know, good mechanical skill there. I just wouldn't be in Africa because you want to be able to have the bosses close to each other for maximum damage. So I'd say inch a little bit closer to the boss when so that the car doesn't charge too far away. But other than that, I mean, it was fine.
Okay. For this trash here, I feel like we wipe a lot here in pucks. A lot of it's like, I feel like tanks die a lot here.
Yeah, I mean, so there's these skunks, right? Like they recast their healing absorb, right? Like all the time. So a nice way of dealing with this pull is like by pulling a lot of them and then doing AoE stops until they all cast at the same time. And then it's as simple as just line of sighting them during the cast. And then it goes on long cooldown again. So there's a few line of sight spots you can use here. Like there's the pipes, there's a big pipe that you just went through from behind as well. That there's like some small line of sight spots as well there you can use. So they're not like, yeah, exactly what you're doing now. I mean, obviously it keeps getting stopped right now, but yeah, you can just go behind this one, like right now. They keep stopping it. But you see, like instead of doing all of these AoE stops, you guys could just have line of sight at once and then not have to deal with them. Like look how many GCDs that is actively happening to try and control these mobs. So yeah.
One more thing about this boss, can you still avoid the charge by melting or something, or not anymore?
It's been I mean, actually, I'm not 100% sure. It's a bit weird. I knew at the beginning of the season I could invis it and melt it, but it had to be very specific timing. It was. I'm pretty sure that they fixed it because it's been very hard to replicate. I've tried a few times and I just got annoyed because like it was like very rarely or almost never happening. So I just stopped doing it because like it seemed very inconsistent.
Okay.
You can, however, like disengage it.
Oh, you can disengage the...
It always goes on the furthest target from its location, right? So you know when it's going on you.
I guess on 1 key level higher, I need to bear form the dispel.
Yeah, without an Oracle Priest, you do need to press a few more cooldowns, that's true.
Do they always just dispel it instantly? Do I just...
Yeah, most of the time they dispel instantly.
Okay. Now that I have Mage Barrier, I'm not gonna press Barkskin, I guess.
Good call. Barkskin the next one as well. I mean, I'd say probably like whenever you can protect your Incarn with an Iron Bark, with a Barkskin. Oh no, Caro.
Okay, listen, I didn't know I was at the furnace. I also did not know that one-shots me. Okay, turns out the jump does actually kill me.
Unlucky.
So if there's a dungeon like this in the TGP or MDI that is kind of straightforward and there's not much you can do with routing and stuff, do you actually spend more time in this one trying to get an advantage through like smaller details? Or do you just like, like spend less time because it's overall easier?
I think it's like, so some dungeons you of course spend a lot more time cooking, but then once you have a route, I don't think it differs from dungeon to dungeon. Once you have a route that you're happy with, then you start like running reps on a dungeon, right? And playing it more and more. And then sometimes you run into certain things and optimizations as you play the dungeons more. And then you look at, like you said, the smaller details. But I don't think that differs from dungeon to dungeon. By the time you get to globals, you have that mindset with every single key. Whether or not it's technical or not, just makes the dungeon easier and gets you to that point faster.
Yeah.
But you will have the same approach where you are looking at, let's say, these smaller details that helps you speed up time a few seconds here and there over the course of the dungeon. But you have that mindset in every key. It's not that just because the key is easier that changes. You just get to that point where you can look at those things quicker than others.
I guess I was wondering, because obviously when there's a dungeon where you can cook a lot, let's say Floodgates, I feel like if you're really like a veteran team that is very good at figuring out efficient routes, you're probably going to be a little bit faster compared to like a new team, I guess. And then you're going to have like a bigger advantage there. So I was thinking maybe you would spend more time in something like Workshop, because that's where it's going to be hard for you to gain an advantage over another team with just like routing and being smarter and more efficient. You just have to literally just play it better somehow, right? Because there's only so much you can do.
So it's a bit different this TGP, because this is the first time that the Blizzard is going in and like giving us a heads up on the dungeons that you're playing a week in advance. This time around, we're like, okay, so we're playing this these maps this weekend, and then we can actively just focus on those instead of having, let's say, an overall amount of keys that you have to do. But I mean, it also plays into the tiebreaker of the dungeon, of the whole tournament, right? And how the tiebreaker work. That if the top teams have the same score, it's the team that did the highest key that win. And then if they have the same score with the same highest key level, then it's about total time. So the most important thing really is making sure that you are doing the highest key level possible, right?
Yeah.
So you can look at the dungeon that would be, and then focus on that one maybe a bit more, and make sure that you are in a position where you're able to do that key level, to make sure that you would never lose a tiebreak. That's important, for example.
And one thing I also want to say, like, do you like the fact that they're announcing the keys?
I mean, so I'm back playing TGP, high keys in a tournament after a few seasons, and last time I played, we were holy shit, we were playing fortified keys, we were playing tyrannical keys, and we're playing different combination of affixes, right? We're talking sanguine, we're talking explosive, we're talking like all these kind of like afflicted, bowstring, all of these affixes that has an impact on how you do the dungeon. So you have to practice these keys on both tyrannical, on fortified, and then you have to prepare yourself for a potential combination of affixes that might, cock your strat completely. Like, okay, so if we have sanguine or bowstring, how is that going to affect our route? And how are we going to plan against that? So now you have to maybe practice certain dungeons with different affix combinations as well. It is way easier to practice now, because now you're just practicing the dungeon. So you're playing 8 keys as opposed to 16 keys and potentially different affix combinations on top of that, because the keys changed a lot when you played them tyrannical and when you played them fortified, and then add like some spicy affixes into the mix. You had to practice a lot of different shit. I feel like it's a lot easier to prep now than it was before. To go back on what you talked about, are you looking at optimizing the smaller, finer details? You get to that point a lot faster now, because you will have learned the dungeon at a way faster stage than before. So you are in a position where you can do that a lot quicker now than what you used to. So that, in combination with them giving us the information ahead of time, it makes it very easy to prep for the tournaments. And I think that, again, accessibility of new teams coming in and playing, it's easier for them to get accustomed to that versus a team that's very experienced and have been playing many tournaments and that is like actively practicing for a month straight, 12 hours a day. The new format now is easier for new teams, for sure.
It's interesting because I almost thought it's the opposite. I didn't think that before, but after I was watching the weekend, I thought because they announced the dungeons, it felt like the teams that are like the lower seeded teams, because they didn't know if they were even going to make it to Sunday, and they didn't really think that they would make it to globals. So for them, it's kind of easy to say, you know what, we're just not practicing the final dungeons. Like, we're not practicing the Sunday dungeons, basically, right? Because with when they don't announce the dungeons, then you can't do that. Then you have to practice kind of everything, which, yeah, obviously it's more practice time that you need. But it almost felt like, especially those two, like Drive Puck and Firmawand, it definitely felt like they literally didn't practice the dungeons for Sunday, right? Because they were like, you know what, we focus so much to make it to Sunday, and then we don't have enough time left to like practice the Sunday dungeons at all. And I felt like that creates like a bigger gap between like the better teams and lower seeded teams. But I'm not sure if that's something that's going to change in the future or not. Like maybe it was just something that happened to these teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's also cup number 1, right? So this is the cup where people have the least amount of practice time, right? Teams definitely get better from cup to cup, with more time. And yeah, I mean, if there's a team that's like after getting the keys announced and with like a little bit of practice beforehand, and their goal is just to make it to day 3, and that's all they practice for. I mean, you know, that's where that team is at then in terms of skill level, right? Like, but I do think that a team like Firmawand, for example, and then they almost like sent the 07 out of the tournament, right? Which would have been like a massive upset. So, but of course if they didn't time that last floodgate, or the other team did, and 07 would have been out, I mean, then they would have been competing against another, let's say, team that is playing off mid on Sunday. Then it could have been anyone's chance at number 2 from those
good point,
teams,
actually.
right?
Yeah, good point. But yeah, I did want to ask. So because I talked to Lemike a little bit, and Lemike said when he started like participating in MDI and TGP, he kind of noticed, and I guess this is different for you because you've been a high-end player for so long, so this kind of happened gradually to you. But Lemike said, so he went from like a somewhat casual, like high-end plus player on live keys to doing MDI and TGP, and then he was introduced to things that, like, to optimization things that he didn't know how he would have even figured stuff like this out if he didn't participate in MDI and TGP. Because I asked him, do you think that participating in those tournaments made you a better player? And he said absolutely yes. He learned so much from participating. He said, for example, like when he did these big pros in MDI and TGP, he had to make target macros, for example, which is something he never really thought of doing on live servers. He had to make last target macros for taunting and stuff like that. And that made me think, okay, there must be more things like these that people don't know to ask, right? Because sometimes if you don't know what a mechanic does, you look it up and you know what to ask. But sometimes if you're looking at improving your gameplay, there's only so many things that you're looking at improving that are obvious. And then at some point, there's things that don't become obvious anymore on how you can be better at the game, because obviously World of Warcraft has a skill ceiling that, in my opinion, isn't like super high. It's not like Counter-Strike or League of Legends or whatever. And at some point, you have to like really get creative on how you can get better at the game. And I was wondering if there's some things that you think that a lot of people aren't doing that would maybe help them out and get better at the game once they already like exhausted all of their other kind of avenues on how to get better. Like if they already acquired all of the knowledge that they can possibly acquire that are logical, like mechanics of bosses and trash and how to do this and how to do that. What is there else that you can do to like really, really get better at the game and that you maybe don't know how to ask or...
So first of all, you learn how to play the game, right? You get good at a class, and then you start playing the content. And then, like, how do you get better from there? Like, I think you should go in with a mentality of, because of like weak Rs and the macro conditions in the game, that if you can think it and you have an idea of a certain way of like, oh, if I had this would be easier. You should expect that it's possible.
Okay.
That it
so we're
can
not talking
be
about
created.
macros, weak Rs, and add-ons, basically, yeah?
Yes, we are like, and because I think that's a big thing. What is possible in WoW, and when it comes to add-on development and weak Rs and all of these things that gives you information on your screen, because that's at the end of the day, having information on your screen that gives you the ability to counteract whatever is happening in the dungeon. And that is like, of course, you have the basic weak Rs that shows your personals, that shows your offensive cooldowns, and then you start tracking the mobs, the cooldowns of abilities in dungeons, so you're ready for them. So okay, the sharpshooters are about to disengage. I'm gonna use my vortex now, right? And you keep building on all of this information. And one thing is having the information on your screen and it being complete clutter, but being a good enough player to be able to play your own class and access all of this information and on your screen and be able to play around it. That's where experience comes into play, right? Like, because you can have all this information on your screen, but like you need to be a really, really good player in order to fully utilize it in a dungeon.
I think, like I said, that's a very good point. I definitely sometimes get really overwhelmed by information, especially like when a season starts and I import a weaker pack from Mirrors or whatever, right? And there's like a million weakers on my screen. And I have a hard time processing this information. As you said, it comes with experience. But is there maybe a better way? Like, is there something you can do? Because each player picks up information a little bit differently, right? A person might be more of a, like somebody might be more into visuals. Another person works better with audio cues, position of where they are. Like people look at different spots on their screen. Like, I guess that's something that people should consider when they import weakers. And maybe also like weed through them a little bit, maybe like remove some that you think are not necessarily super important to you. Or would you say keep all of the information that even if it's only helpful in like rare cases, should you still keep it and just get used to it and like learn how to deal with all of this info? Or should you try to minimize the information first and then add on to it once you're used to it?
Yeah, so this is what people usually do, right? Most people. They're like, oh shit, I'm going to download this WeakR package on Waco. I'm going to download my favorite streamers' UI elements for tracking and plater and scripts and all of these things. And now you have all this information on your screen that some of these top players are using. And then you just have it on your screen. And what happens is that most people have this on their screen, but they don't use it because they're not really in a, good enough to be able to do it, or they just get overwhelmed with visuals, with bars, with audio cues, and before you know it, you just have so much that they just start ignoring it. And that's the bad approach, right? Like, I think it's fine to have this information, but it's also, once you have this information on your screen, that's also where we go back to like recording your gameplay and analyzing it. You play a dungeon, you see what sounds come up on different mechanics, you see the bars, you see that, and you go through your VOD and you look at it pull to pull and you understand what it does, and then you actually understand what all these UI elements do for you, and you will very quickly go in and see, okay, so I really like this helped a lot, or this was a little bit too much, and then you go in and adjust and edit these UI elements, cater to what works for you, because too many audio cues and it starts becoming something you ignore. Too little, you might be missing information when a lot of things are happening at the same time, right? So that's where audio cues can help a lot when you're looking at 2-3 different things at the same time, and then all of a sudden this audio cue mean like, oh yeah, shit, this is happening now as well, and that can help a lot. So it's about just finding a nice balance that works for you as a player, and then really going in and making sure that, well, the UI elements that you have are not there just for the sake of being there, but they're being used to optimize your gameplay. I think that's something that's going to help out a lot of people, because like I can tell you that we're spending a lot of time optimizing UI, and whenever there is anything that I'm like, okay, this pull was annoying because I had to do way too much, or had to like, if there's anything weaker related or UI related that would give you more information or help a pull being easier to deal with, we are jumping on that immediately. And that also goes with, like, we have the experience of like, well, we know what's possible with WeakRs. We know what we can do to make certain things easier to deal with, or if I'm missing some information, or this WeakR could be really cool for this boss, then we get that made as soon as possible, right? Like we just jump on that right away. I think WoW, from a mechanical standpoint, like you said, you were talking about like skill set and CS and stuff like that. It might not be that hard, but WoW has a lot of knowledge, and I think it's a very knowledge-based game where experience plays a big role into like how good you are at the game. Because you can take all of these top M+ players and then you put them in a raid fight that both of them have done like hundreds of times, and they will perform pretty like close in terms of DPS output and rotating the personals and stuff like that. But the biggest skill set and the biggest difference between a new team and an experienced team is their ability to learn and tackle and come up with strategies, routing in a new dungeon, in a new season, faster than everyone else. And that's where the biggest difference is. It's knowledge. It's being able to tackle these keys, look at a route, come up with good routes, figure out how to optimize them. And they do that at a higher level than other teams. And that's where the biggest skill difference comes into play. And then,
Wait,
of course, timing the key in time.
Sorry.
Yeah?
I have to talk about something because we're about to start this key, and the tank linked this route, which is, I guess a lot of people are doing this now because you guys did it on the weekend where, you know, Fear sigiled these footmen and then had now go past and then Shadow Melt. It's interesting because the demon hunter linked this, and then the rogue said Shroud start, and the demon hunter goes, no, first use Fear Melt and after Shroud. But the Shroud afterwards doesn't really do much because there's self-detection mobs, right?
Yeah, the night self-detection mobs. But you still need to Shroud or Invis past the sharpshooters and the footmen in the middle. So
you have to?
Yeah, I mean, you need to
you
walk
pull
through the middle.
G6.
You still need to walk through the middle because the patrols are slightly to the left and to the right of you, and then you walk in between. So you still need Shroud. Now, the problem with the knights are the ones that have stealth detection, so you need to be careful with those. But you have a rogue in the group, and if you distract the knight, mobs with stealth detection have less detection while they're distracted. So you can just distract one side and then move slightly towards that side more. You can see he even made an arrow look the way you are supposed to.
Yeah, that was the rogue, yeah.
Yeah, that's the Shroud. And I guess you will distract the right one in this case.
I'll explain something real quick because somebody asked how we would Shadow Melt because the Shaman does not have Melt. So basically, if you CC something that is not a true CC, so if you use like Fear Sigil or Sheep or Hibernate or whatever, then only the first person that actually gets in combat with them will stay in combat with them. Like everyone else can actually just pass without getting in combat. So you only need one Shadow Melt to skip these footmen, basically. So as long as you make sure that the Demon Hunter is the first person to go through. So if you guys ever do a skip like this in your pack key, then make sure you don't go through first, right? Because then if you're the first one that goes through, then you're in combat, then you need to be the one that drops aggro.
It's a different case here because Fear Sigil does get the DH into combat already.
The Fear Sigil does that by itself. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. It does engage combat. And funny enough, it's not just with Fear Sigil specifically, it's with any type of CC. Like as an example, if you walked into a pack from stealth and you used Incap Roar, for the duration of the Incap Roar, they could walk through the mobs over to the other side, and you would be the only one in combat. So it's not just with, but Fear Sigil is obviously a way longer duration than Roar, right? So it's a lot easier to do. But we actually used to use Mass Polymorph or something similar to Fear Sigil in the past.
Oh, yeah, true. I remember that. I almost forgot that Mass Polymorph is an ability because no one's using it anymore.
No, it's way shorter duration. It used to be 1 minute, right? It used to be actually like really good. Now it's like Mass Root, just reduced.
What are true CCs? It's Sap,
Sap,
obviously.
Imprison, and Sleepwalk. Yeah.
And Sleepwalk, yeah.
Yeah, Sap,
So if you
Imprison,
don't
and
have any of
Sleepwalk.
those, then you need to do it the other way.
Exactly. And like you said, if you're not like, let's say you have a pack of 4 mobs and you are using something like a Trap or Polymorph, which is not true CCs, on the mob that is furthest to the left, you can have and that one is guaranteed to be body pulled as you're running through the pack on the left side. If you run far enough to the left, you're only gonna get into combat with the sheep. But because it is sheeped currently, it will not chain the rest of the pack. But it will when the sheep expires. So what you do is that the first person that gets into range of this polymorph will get in combat with the sheep without pulling the rest of the pack. But now everyone else can walk through the sheep without getting in combat. And then you can wait for the rest of the team to walk past that pack. And then the person that got in combat with the polymorph can, use, as a mage, can use Invis, Hunter can use Feign Death, or if you're a Night Elf, that person could use Shadow Melt to drop combat. And that's the way that you have you can skip packs as well.
That's one of those things, I guess. I think it's very cool that we have stuff like this. But then at the same time, I feel like how should a person, like an average player, know that? Like, because it's not like an intuitive thing that you can figure out without somebody literally telling you, right? Like obviously at this point I feel like
Yeah.
it's somewhat like knowledge that is widely known, that is kind of something that people just know. But yeah, at the same time, how do you even ask the question? How
Yeah,
would you
I mean-
even know to ask this, how it works, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's why I think WoW skill is a lot of like accumulated knowledge, right? And I think that if you start playing with good players and you start doing high end plus, you will start adapting and learning all of these things, right? Just by playing. Because yeah, I mean, if you're new at the game, there's no way in hell you even think that far, right? As if this is something.
Okay, so this is the pull I died the last time on, so this time we already improved.
But watch
did
out,
not
the
die.
sharpshooter's far away. This means that you have a high chance of getting aggro from this guy.
Yeah, I didn't want to adopt it because of it.
Yeah, that was smart because that guy will just shoot you to death. Does a lot of damage.
How do you deal with like reflective shield if you do a big pull like you do in TGP? What do you do with Blood Beast procs?
Yeah, what do we do with the procs?
Well, yeah,
do you
because
mean?
I mean I've played this dungeon and some like a DK had a Blood Beast proc just explodes basically on the shield and got one shot. And I figured that's
Hey.
something that could happen as well in TGP, no?
That's never happened.
Oh, really? Okay.
That
So I guess it was just like really unlucky timing then.
that sounds like getting one shot. I don't. Yeah, I've never seen that happening. I don't think people die to like just hitting the shield. Most people are dying when they're taking damage from the shield and then they're getting sucked from the light spawn, or like a cast is going off at the same time. Like that's usually what kills people, not just reflective shield.
It did happen in my pocket, and at first I didn't believe it. I was like, no way. But then I looked at the death log, and it really was literally just 100 to 0.
Really, that's crazy. I've never seen that. Like I've
Yeah,
done this
me
dungeon
neither.
so many times. We've been doing it on 20, and I have never never seen it as a problem.
It's one of those unlucky things, I guess, then.
But one interesting thing to note, though, is that popping your cooldowns in the shield is not the smartest thing. Because the cooldown of her shield starts whenever her shield expires. So if you are popping all of your cooldowns into the shield, you are going to have less damage outside of the shield, which means you might get an extra shield because of it. So you want to put all of your cooldowns and most of your damage into her whenever the shield is down to be able to kill her off quicker. Like being an arcane mage, you don't want to pop arcane surge into the shield, for example. You want to do it outside of the shield.
I mean, if your cooldown's already running and she shields herself, you still want to like put it into the shield, I guess. Like it's not
Of course,
that
I'm
important.
not gonna stop damage. Yeah, of course not. You
Yeah.
just keep pumping. If I
Yeah.
die, I mean, I don't. I mean, the thing is, the pull that we're doing, of course, like we are playing double light spawn with, let's say, the priest as well. So you're taking damage from the reflective shields, you're getting stuck from the light spawn. I mean, there's a lot of damage going on, right? And I never had any problems with like dying to the reflective shield. So I don't know if I'm getting a fuck ton of healing, or if I'm just, of course, I'm also rotating my personals properly. Did you just check recap? Did you die to Impale?
What's Impale? Is that frontal?
It's a knight that just targets a
Oh.
player and completely sends.
Oh, it was just a disruptive shot. And Impale. Oh, okay.
Nope. Yeah. You got comboed.
All right.
This is why you like people skipping the knights and high keys.
Oh my god. I don't think we're making it. At least I don't.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't have a rest, I guess. Oh,
I
maybe we have a
mean,
engineering rest?
So this is obviously a pretty rough pull, right? Like, I mean, in a pug, but yeah.
Well,
doing
fuck.
all the paladins. So I would like to add that this is the perfect example of just doing what top teams do without looking at the cups and classes you have. You're playing with an outlaw rogue and an MM hunter, and you decide to go in and do that many targets. It's not good. It's better to just go for a steady W route with a Suk comp like this that's target capped. Like you don't want to pull too much. Yeah, you just add a level of difficulty, but no one is able to do any type of damage. It's just not good. It's just better to just split it. It's easier. You don't have the extra caster. You're not gonna lose that much time because you have target capped classes anyway. There was just it's not smart to do that big pull with Outlaw and MM Hunter.
Yeah, that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier. It's another case of like not just doing a route just because other people doing it, but like understanding and being able to create a route around a different comp is important in this case.
Yeah, and this is also something I could have noticed, I guess. So, like when I looked at the route at the start, I was like, we were all like focused on the start here, but I guess nobody checked and like reconsidered that maybe this is not something that we should be doing.
Yeah, so that area is being done in like 2 pulls right now. You think you're better off doing it in 3 with this comp for sure.
I guess it's also like a good tip to give to people to actually like properly check the route and actually, like especially if you're playing a different comp that is not the main comp. I think really checking the route and thinking about if you can do all of this does make sense, even if you're not the tank, because a lot of people just give all the responsibility to the tank and like it's like whatever, the tank pull, like the tank links the route, we're doing it, and they're not really thinking about or not putting any brain power into it at all, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I wouldn't expect the tank to like understand the damage profile of every single like spec in the game when you're pugging. I think that in this case, you link the route. You as a Moonkin, you don't care. You can do 20 mob pulls, you're fine. But as an MO Hunter and Outlaw Rogue, you can just quickly look at it and say, I'm target cap. It's probably best that we split this area in 3 instead. You know, like that would be good feedback as someone that plays that spec. So that you don't go in and like just deplete the key like you did now on an unrealistic pull. But I don't have more time, unfortunately. I need to jump to raid.
Oh, okay.
I need to go now. But it was a pleasure. I hope you learned a little bit.
I learned a lot. Thank you so much for joining and for staying around for so long. A lot of pitch has happened, and I enjoyed all of it. I hope the viewers also enjoyed it, a thing or two, and learned something. I'm sure they did. And now they all have to apply all of this knowledge and become really good, and then they're going to compete with Wunderbar next time on the TGP or MDI.
We didn't analyze your gameplay so much, but I hope that was okay.
I would love to do that as well. The thing is just like I try to focus on general stuff because I feel like then people will learn more that are watching. But I do think that people would also learn as well if you analyze my gameplay. So maybe next time we can do that as well. I think a lot of people that I invite, they're like too scared to tell me what I'm doing wrong, you know? But I'm sure you would not be scared to do that. So next time, maybe we just do a full analyzing of what I'm doing wrong.
But they're scared to tell you what you're doing wrong, or what? Is that
so people think I'm like offended or something if they tell me I made a mistake or whatnot.
I mean, that's another thing as well. Being offended or taking criticism bad, that's just a bad trait to have. You know, you should put your ego aside and just. There's really no reason to get offended. If you listen to our voice cams and heard like how direct we are with each other and how we talk to each other, you might even say it's borderline toxic. But like no one takes it to heart or personal at any point, right? We're just trying to win and we just want to do our best. Of course, you can say it in a nice way, but like you don't have to beat around the bush either. You know, like it's all about getting to where you want to be as fast as possible, and you don't have to like feel attacked personally at all, right?
Of course.
Really not.
I mean, if you play with new players, maybe you try to be not as direct. Like, try to word it nicely, but in the end, the person, if they don't take criticism, then they're not going to improve. But then, then there's no point.
Yeah, of course. I mean, when you're playing with new players, of course, like you shouldn't like randomly say, "Bro, what the fuck are you doing? You're so shit." Like, you know, like that's obviously not the best way to like tell someone something, but you also should be open to criticism and not take things like too badly either.
Yep, that is true.
If you can like say if you can turn it around, someone says like, "Yo, bro, what the fuck are you doing? You're so shit," and then respond in a nice, calm way, I think it might just throw that person off a little bit because he's used to getting flamed back.
Yeah.
Like, you just gotta not give a fuck. I think that's what people online are saying, really. And then just see what he wrote for what it is, and not necessarily take the tone to heart. Like, so, because, like, why would you care about what some random guy on the internet says? Take the important bits and ignore the
emotion behind it, I guess.
Emotional one, yeah.
Yeah. That's actually a good point. Because that it's tough to do that. It's tough to not feel attacked. But doing that, especially online, that makes a lot of sense. And it's gonna, as you said, throw the person off, and maybe they're gonna start being super nice afterwards because they're like, whoa, I was being mean and this person just responded in a calm way. Oh.
No, 100%. But thank you for your time, Carol. I'm gonna head off now. I'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Enjoy the raid.
Thank you. There's too many raids at this point. I don't enjoy them anymore. Way too many splits.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, let's hope it goes past quickly and you don't wipe anywhere.
Yeah, but we're making a lot of gold. We're boosting like 2 people each raid now for 8 out of 8. So we're getting a lot of gold for the next race.
Oh, and for the dinar thing as well. I also need to kill the mythic bosses to be able to buy my trinkets, because I still only have dungeon trinkets, by the way.
Yeah, go to the Echo Discord and just buy a boost today if you want.
How expensive is it?
I think it's 40 million for 8 out of 8.
What? Okay.
That's with all loot included as well. It is just with his handling the boost. That's not up to me. You need to talk to him.
All right, messaging Justway.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, see you later.
See you later, Mike. Bye-bye. All right, just wait. Where's my boost? I like how every single person that comes on that I'm doing these M+ bootcamps with, I always try to convince them to give me a boost with their guild. First I asked Petrarch, yes, with Krona. He didn't message me yet, by the way. He said he'll talk to them. Well, I didn't get a message. What the hell? Oh man. I'm not getting boosted for free, guys. It's a struggle.